Hello, in this video we're just going to go through this quick warm-up question, and that is we want to write a program that takes two integer values a and b and outputs the absolute difference. So if a is 4 and b is 6, we get 2, and if a is 6 and b is 4, we get 2. And so what that tells us is that we have to do the subtraction in the right order in order to get that positive or that absolute value difference. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our inputs, and I'm going to say a equals, I'm going to use the input function, and the input function in Python can take a single parameter, which will be the prompt. So I'm going to say a is equal to input, and I'm going to say input integer value, and I'm going to say b equals input, and I'm going to say input integer value. Now before I actually go on and perform the next step here, I want to show you something. If I say c equals a minus b here, and then I print c, I'm going to get a runtime error. So let me show you this. So if I run this, and I say 6 and 7, it crashes. Now the reason why it's crashing is because when Python takes an input, it assumes that it is a string. And storing 6 as a string versus 6 as an integer actually is done differently by the computer. So that means we can't subtract them when we store them as a string. So what we need to do is we need to cast these, and we're going to cast them into integers. And we do that by actually saying a equals int a. And what this does is it takes the int function and it passes it a value, which is a string, which we know is an integer, and then casts it. So it changes the way we store it and stores it back into a. And here we say b equals int b, and now I've casted this into this b variable into an int. So now if I come down here, let's clear our screen and let's run our program again. Notice if I say 6 and 5, the subtraction works. Now, the one thing that happens here is that, or the one problem I have, is that if I put 6 minus 6 and 5, it works because a is greater than b. And because of that, we get the absolute difference. But if I put 5 and 6, I get -1, but I don't want that. So what I can do is a couple things here. The first thing I could do is I could use a built-in function called the absolute value function. And the absolute value function takes an integer value or a float that is a real number and returns the absolute value, that is the positive version of it. So if in this case I pass it c, and I now run this program, I hit this up down here, I hit run, and I say input, and I say 10 and 4, I get 6 even though 10 minus 4 is -6. Sorry. I have this backwards. Let's try this again. I put 4 and 10. 4 and 10. Because 4 is A and 10 is B. And 4 minus 10 is -6. But because I'm passing it into the absolute value function, it converts it to a positive value. Now this absolute value function is great, but what I want students to really be understanding in this case is what's called a conditional structure. And that is our if statement. So if I calculate A minus B and I get the value, I can also say if. And if A is less than B, that is, if A is smaller, this is the case when we're going to get a negative value for C. I'm going to redo that calculation. I'm going to say B minus A. And this is what's called a conditional statement. That is, if this statement evaluates to true, we run this code block that's inside the if statement. This is the if code block. Now, there are lots of different ways to set this up, and this is really just a warm-up here. But again, walking away from this warm-up, you should be comfortable taking an input, casting it to an integer, and then setting up a basic if statement. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.